The air in that rented house outside Denver always felt too thin. Not because of the altitude, but because something in it had soured, like oxygen that had passed through too many closed mouths and clenched jaws. Even the silence had weight to it. We'd been there 3 days. Laura wanted a change of pace. That was the phrase she used while booking it. Said the kids deserved a break. Said maybe we could all reset. I should have known what she meant was. She wanted me to foot the bill for a vacation that had nothing to do with rest, and everything to do with escape. The house was all pine and pretense. Faux rustic, with vinyl wood floors and dusty shelves lined with books no one would ever read. The kind of place you rent for pictures, not for peace. I paid the deposit in silence. Like I always did. That morning, I was the last one up. I'd been up late the night before, fixing the garbage disposal that Kyle stuffed with pizza crusts, running the dishwasher Laura insisted was acting weird, double-checking the Wi-Fi password that no one had thanked me for finding. By the time I shuffled into the kitchen, the rest of them were halfway through breakfast. Kyle in his usual uniform. Hood up, earbuds in, hoodie sleeves crusted with who knows what, sat at the table, devouring pancakes he didn't make. His sister, Ava, 13 going on indifferent, scrolled on her phone with one hand and stirred a bowl of soggy cereal with the other. Laura sat across from them, tapping her screen, nodding slightly at whatever was flashing back at her. I cleared my throat as I walked in. Nobody looked up. I poured myself the last of the coffee. Cold. Burnt. Of course. I didn't say anything. Just grabbed a mug, filled it anyway, and turned to make my way to the table. That's when it happened. As I passed behind Kyle's chair, he shifted, deliberately, and slammed his shoulder into my ribs. Not playful. Not careless. This wasn't a boy stumbling in his seat. This was contact. Intentional. Measured. The mug jolted in my hand. Coffee splashed out, scalding the skin between my thumb and forefinger. I stopped, blinking down at the spill. Kyle didn't look up. He just leaned forward slightly, grabbed a sausage link, and stuffed it into his mouth. I looked at him, but there was no apology waiting in his posture. No hint of accident. He knew exactly what he'd done. I turned toward the table. Really? I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Laura's eyes didn't move from her phone. Don't start, she murmured, like I was the one looking for a fight. That was all she said. Not Kyle apologize. Not did you just shove him? Not even a glance to acknowledge the contact. Just a bored, quiet don't start. And that was it. Not the shove. Not the sting of the coffee. It was Laura's tone, disinterested, casual, that did it. That's the moment I knew. The trial was over. The sentence had been quietly handed down while I wasn't looking. I had lost something I didn't even know I was defending. I stood there for a moment, still holding the dripping mug, heat seeping into my palm. My breath was steady. My pulse wasn't. I didn't start anything, I said, still calm. But maybe you ought to ask him what just happened. Laura didn't blink. I saw it, she said. Her voice was flat, dismissive. Just let it go. Just let it go. I looked back at Kyle. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, just for a second. And what I saw there wasn't guilt. It wasn't anger. It was satisfaction. He'd done it on purpose. And he knew Laura wouldn't do a damn thing about it. Because he wasn't really my son. And I wasn't really a man worth defending in that house anymore. I took a breath, held it in, and walked to the sink. Set the mug down. Ran my hand under cold water, watching the red skin bloom into a scalded welt. I didn't speak again. Kyle finished his pancakes. Ava left her cereal half-eaten and wandered off, still glued to her screen. Laura stayed at the table another 15 minutes, never once looking up. When the kitchen finally emptied, I stood alone by the sink, staring out the window. Outside, the pine trees were swaying in the breeze. The rental sat on the edge of some nature preserve, the kind with overpriced hiking trails and signs warning about bears no one ever saw. I planned to take the kids out there. Thought maybe we could walk a loop, breathe some fresh air, talk like people. But now, watching the branches bend and sway outside the window, I realized something. I didn't want to walk with them. Not anymore. Not after this. I'd spent years pretending this was a family. Years stepping in, stepping up, and stepping aside whenever it made things easier for Laura, for the kids, for whatever shape our lives were supposed to take. I told myself sacrifice would earn belonging, that showing up would buy respect. But that morning, that shove, that shrug, made something in me go still. It wasn't about Kyle's shoulder. It was the permission in Laura's silence. The message her inaction screamed louder than words. You're not worth standing up for. You're not one of us. You pay the bills, you fix the leaks, you make sure the lights stay on. But you are not family. I thought of every time I'd bitten my tongue, every time I'd paid for something and said nothing. The braces, the sports gear, the therapy appointments Laura scheduled and forgot to attend. The car Kyle drove under my name on my insurance that he never once thanked me for. The gas money, the phone plan, the rent, all of it taken, absorbed, expected. And now I was just a man who got shoved during breakfast. And the woman he loved didn't even care enough to lift her eyes. That was when I knew. Not the kind of knowing that leads to a fight, but the kind that settles into your bones like cold water. The kind you don't argue with. Something had ended. Not loud. Not with a door slam or a scream. Just like that, quiet as a phone screen. I stood there, my hand under running water, and felt the shift inside me. A small click like a gear turning the wrong direction. And then the calm came. Real calm. Not the fake kind I'd practiced for years. The measured voice, the deep breaths, the "it's okay, I understand." This was something different. This was understanding. They'd drawn their line. In silence. In shrugs. In shoves. And now it was my turn. I didn't speak of the shove again. Not to Kyle. Not to Laura. Not to anyone. There was no point. If you have to explain why being pushed matters, it already doesn't. The next morning, I woke at 5 out of habit. Not from an alarm. My body had trained itself over the years to start early. Too many jobs. Too many mouths. Too many days where the work began before the sun considered rising. I dressed in silence, pulled on my boots, grabbed my toolbox from the corner of the garage. The kids were still asleep. Laura had rolled to the far edge of the bed sometime in the night. She didn't stir when I slipped out. That day was drywall. A client's basement remodel east of town. Nothing complex. Measure twice. Cut once. Stack the sheets. Lift and screw. I'd done this kind of labor so many times that my arms moved on memory alone. My mind, though, was elsewhere. I kept thinking about the kitchen. About the cold coffee. And the sound of Laura's voice. Flat. Indifferent. Don't start. That tone was more honest than anything she'd said in weeks. After the client paid and the tools were back in the truck, I sat in the driver's seat and didn't turn the ignition. I watched the sunset settle behind the mountains, spilling orange light over my windshield. There was dust on the glass. The truck smelled like cut wood and sweat. I stared at the steering wheel for a long time and felt something loosen in my chest. Not grief. Not anger. Relief. Like a rope snapping after years of tension. Back at the rental house, the porch light was off. No one had remembered. I unlocked the door, stepped inside. Ava was watching something loud in the living room, feet on the couch. Kyle was nowhere in sight. Laura sat at the dining table with her laptop open, answering work emails with one hand, sipping wine with the other. No one looked up. No one said, "How was your day?" No one asked if I'd eaten. I stood in the doorway longer than necessary, waiting, testing, seeing if anyone would break the rhythm. They didn't. I walked past them and down the hall to the back room where I kept my paperwork. It had always been my space, the office. They called it, though no one else ever entered. It smelled of printer ink, receipts, and unspoken effort. Everything I had done for them, every tuition, bill, payment plan, and medical form had passed through that room. I sat down at the desk, turned on the lamp, and for the first time in years I opened every folder, every drawer. I laid it all out in front of me, not out of anger, not to take inventory of what I was owed, just to see it, plainly, clearly, without excuses. The lease agreement for the house back home. My name, not Laura's. The bank statements, deposits in, payments out. Utilities all under my account. Streaming subscriptions. Grocery apps. The phone plans. The car insurance, Kyle's included. Tuition autopay schedules, the note on Ava's braces timeline. The Wi-Fi login, my email registered. Even the rental house we were in, the contract was under my ID. I signed for it. I paid the deposit. I was the emergency contact. All of it mine. That was the truth I'd avoided. Not because I didn't know it, but because I was afraid of what it meant. I had been holding up the entire structure alone, convincing myself that family was a shared burden. It wasn't. They were passengers. I was the vehicle. They were renters. I was the mortgage. I took out a yellow legal pad and started writing. Not a letter, just a list of services to cancel, subscriptions to pause, cards to disable, passwords to reset, accounts to transfer or close. I didn't think in terms of revenge, only boundaries. That night, after they'd gone to bed, lights off, doors closed, the house exhaling into its nocturnal silence, I moved through the shadows and packed one bag. One. I didn't slam drawers or rustle hangers. I didn't stomp or cry. I folded my shirts and socks like a man preparing for a trip he'd already taken in his mind. I left the rest, not because I didn't want it, but because I didn't need it. The next morning, I was gone before the coffee brewed. I paused the automatic payments on Kyle's tuition. I disabled the shared grocery account. The delivery app password was changed. Streaming services paused. Wi-Fi suspended. Cell plans for anyone not on my side of the bloodline removed. Insurance for Kyle's car revoked. My name taken off the policy. Let the premiums climb on someone else's watch. I called the landlord and notified them I'd be removing my name from the lease at month's end. Laura could renew under hers if she wanted. Or not. No explanation. No arguments. Just administrative clarity. By noon, I'd found a temporary room in a contractor's unit across town. No lease, no commitment, just a key and a clean bed. I dropped my bag on the mattress, sat down, and listened. There was nothing. No footsteps overhead. No voices shouting from the hallway. No door slams or passive-aggressive silences. Just stillness, pure and unbroken. I sat in it for hours, not moving, letting it settle over me. By late afternoon, the calls began. First Laura, 3 rings, then voicemail. Then a text. Hey, where are you? Are you okay? Then Kyle. Why is the Wi-Fi down? Then Ava. Netflix isn't working. What's the password again? I didn't respond. Then the tone shifted. Laura again. I'm not playing games. Call me now. Kyle. My car insurance just got canceled. WTF? Eva, Mom's freaking out. Call her. Still, I said nothing. I wasn't hiding. I was waiting. At 6:47 p.m., my phone lit up with Laura's name again. I picked up this time. You're gone, she asked. Her voice wasn't panicked. Just confused. Like the house had shifted and she wasn't sure if it was an earthquake or a dream. Yes. You didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. A pause. The payments stopped. Everything. What the hell are you doing? I closed my eyes. Breathed in. I stopped holding it up. What does that mean? It means I let go of what wasn't mine to carry anymore. Silence stretched on the other end. I pictured her sitting at the table, the one I bought, in the house I paid for, surrounded by the kids who wouldn't call me dad, but never hesitated to spend my money like they'd earned it. You can't just disappear, she said finally. I didn't disappear, I replied. I stepped away. There's a difference. She didn't reply. I waited, then ended the call. That night, I slept without interruption. No thudding music. No stomping through hallways. No raised voices. Just the hum of a refrigerator and the muffled wind brushing past a single-pane window. When I woke the next morning, I felt no guilt. Just quiet. And that quiet was enough to remind me. I had been a ghost in my own home for too long. A silent provider. A walking wallet. A tolerated presence. Now, for the first time, I was visible not because I shouted but because I vanished. And the silence I left behind? That was the only sound that finally got their attention. By late morning, the quiet was gone. It didn't break all at once. Crept in through vibrations. My phone buzzing against the nightstand. Once, twice, then again. I didn't reach for it immediately. I let it ring out. Let the sound finish what it started. When I finally picked it up, there were 9 missed calls. All from Laura. 3 texts from Kyle. 1 from a number I didn't recognize, probably the landlord. Not a single message asked why I'd left. They all asked what I'd done. I sat up on the edge of the bed and read them in order. Laura's first message was measured, almost polite. Hey, something's wrong with the accounts. Call me. The second was sharper. I don't know what you think you're proving, but this isn't okay. By the 5th, the tone had collapsed entirely. You're ruining everything. Answer your phone. Kyle didn't bother with restraint. My card declined. Then, my insurance says I'm not covered. Then, fix this. No, please. Know what happened. Just expectation. Muscle memory. The assumption that I would correct the imbalance the moment they noticed discomfort. I set the phone down and showered. Took my time. Let the water run hot until the mirror fogged and my thoughts slowed into something solid. When I dressed, I felt steady, not detached, not numb. Just finished. The call from the landlord came while I was tying my boots. Morning, he said carefully. Your wife says you moved out. I did. And you're withdrawing from the lease? Yes. A pause. Papers shifting. That puts her in a difficult position. I almost laughed. Almost. It puts her in an honest one, I said. That's the difference. Another pause. I'll need written notice. You'll have it by noon. I ended the call and sent the email. No flourish. No commentary. Just confirmation. At 11:42, Laura showed up. I hadn't given her the address. She must have tracked it through the phone bill before I cut access. She knocked once, sharp, impatient, then again harder. I opened the door without hesitation. She stood there with her arms crossed, eyes bright with anger, hair pulled back like she'd prepared for battle. Not grief, not worry, fury. You don't get to do this, she said before I could speak. I already did. Kyle was in the car behind her. I could see him through the windshield, jaw tight, staring straight ahead like this was happening to him. Not because of him. You cut everything off, she said. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes. Her voice rose. Kyle can't drive. His insurance is gone. The internet is down. The rent. I know. She stepped forward. Then fix it. That was it. That was the moment. Not why. Not how could you. Not what happened to us. Just fix it. I shook my head slowly. No. Her face shifted, confusion first, then disbelief. What do you mean, no? I mean, this isn't a mistake. It's a decision. She laughed once, sharp and brittle. This is about breakfast? About Kyle bumping into you? No, I said quietly. It's about what followed. Her mouth opened, then closed. She searched my face for something, guilt, maybe, or fear. She found neither. You're punishing us, she said. I'm stepping out. Kyle finally got out of the car. He walked up fast, shoulders tense. This is messed up, he snapped. You don't just disappear and shut everything down. I looked at him, really looked. You shoved me, I said, and your mother told me not to start. He scoffed. That was nothing. That was everything. Laura cut in. Don't turn this into some moral crusade. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being precise. Kyle threw his hands up. So what, we're just screwed now? I didn't answer right away. I let the silence do its work. Let it press against them the way it had pressed against me for years. I didn't take revenge, I said finally. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just stopped pretending I mattered where I clearly didn't. Laura's voice dropped. You're destroying this family. I met her eyes. No. I stopped holding it together alone. Her anger flickered just for a second into something else. Panic. Not for me. For the logistics. The weight she hadn't realized I'd been carrying. You can't leave us like this, she said. I already did. Kyle muttered something under his breath. I didn't ask what. Laura stared at me like she was seeing the cost of silence for the first time. Not the emotional cost, the practical one. The kind you can't scroll past. This didn't have to happen, she said. I nodded. You're right. Didn't. She waited. I didn't continue. They stood there another moment. Then Laura turned back toward the car. Kyle followed, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. As they drove away, the street went quiet again. Not empty. Clear. I closed the door, locked it, and sat down on the bed. My phone buzzed once more. A message from Laura. You ruined everything. I stared at it, then typed my reply. No, I just stopped holding it all up. I turned the phone off. And for the first time, there was nothing left demanding that I stay. By morning, the house was truly empty. Not because I had left, but because stability had. The weight I'd carried, quietly and without praise, was gone. And without it, everything else began to fold in on itself. There were no more text messages. No more missed calls. The silence had shifted. No longer the cold shoulder kind I'd grown used to, but a raw, stretched absence. Like something essential had been removed from the room, and everyone left behind was too afraid to admit what it was. They weren't reaching out anymore to ask me to come back. They weren't offering apologies. They weren't negotiating. Because they knew. They knew what I had taken with me. Not furniture, not clothes, but structure, direction. The unspoken net beneath them, always catching the consequences before they hit the floor. It was gone. I was gone. And now, finally, the house was quiet. Not peaceful. Just without anchor. I kept my distance. I didn't stalk their social media. I didn't call to check in. I didn't wait for an invitation to return to the table that had so easily unseated me. I went to work, came home, paid my bills, all mine now and only mine, and lived in that steady, steady quiet. And it felt like breathing again after years underwater. I heard from mutual friends here and there, enough to sketch the outlines. Kyle had tried calling his biological father. More than once. No answer. Then a brief reply, a short text, 3 words. Not my problem. After that, nothing. The school sent a withdrawal notice. Kyle had missed payment deadlines. The insurance company sent a final bill, unpaid. The phone plan was downgraded. The car registration lapsed. Then the car itself, towed for expired tags, parked too long outside the old house. They were unraveling. And Laura. I imagined her standing in that kitchen, eyes darting between bills, mouths to feed, rooms once filled with the hum of assumption. The same rooms I had paid to heat, to cool, to hold together. Her silence, once a shield for Kyle, now hung like a noose over her own head. She hadn't stepped forward. Hadn't stood between me and Kyle when the first line was crossed. Hadn't spoken up when respect was chipped away in increments. And now, she was seeing the cost of that silence. Not theoretical, not emotional, literal, practical, in overdue notices and closed accounts, in service interruptions, in quiet, bitter stares from the children she taught by example, that a man's worth could be dismissed as easily as his name. There was no screaming match, no late-night confrontation, no final monologue at the doorstep, just a void. She hadn't expected the silence to stretch this long. I knew her well enough to picture it. The way she glanced at her phone in the mornings now, expecting a message, a breadcrumb, a single sign that I was still orbiting the family, still invested from afar. But I wasn't, because this wasn't distance. This was withdrawal. Full, permanent, surgical. I remembered a conversation we'd had years ago, before we got married. Kyle had been 10. Ava was still in grade school. We were sitting on the porch, sharing a beer, watching the kids bicker over a trampoline. You sure you're ready for this? Laura asked. It's not easy stepping into a family that's already moving. I told her yes, that I knew what I was taking on, that I didn't need blood, only trust. I meant it, but what I didn't understand back then was that love, without boundaries, becomes servitude. That sacrifice, when unnoticed long enough, turns into resentment, and then into regret. And now Now I was past regret. I was somewhere colder, cleaner, not angry, just done. One afternoon, weeks after I'd left, I found a letter taped to my apartment door. No postage. Hand-delivered. Folded neatly. Laura's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. I stared at the envelope for a long time, sitting in the hallway, listening to the muffled laughter of the neighbors through the wall, thinking about how different this felt, how small the gesture was, compared to the gaping silence that had preceded it. Eventually, I read it. It wasn't long, just a few lines. I didn't realize how much you were doing. I didn't realize how much we were asking. I thought you could handle it. I thought silence meant acceptance. I was wrong. No apology. No request to return. Just a quiet admission. And even that too late. Because you can only pull a man's name off the wall so many times before he stops rebuilding it. I didn't write back. I folded the letter in half, slid it into a drawer, and let it rest beside all the receipts. Not out of spite, but out of respect for what was finished. There's a kind of stillness that doesn't ask for anything. It just is. That's where I lived now. In the aftermath. In the echo. In the cost. Sometimes people ask why I didn't fight harder. Why I didn't stay and make it work. And I tell them this, because I did fight. For years. Quietly. With every extra shift. With every unsaid rebuttal. With every bill paid without thanks. Every insult swallowed. Every line blurred for the sake of peace. But at some point, fighting becomes surviving. And surviving isn't the same as living. Now, when I walk into my apartment, the lights are always off, but so is the tension. The floors creak, but they don't groan under the weight of disrespect. The fridge hums, the coffee pot drips, and no one glares at me across a breakfast table with inherited disdain. I eat in silence. I sleep in silence. And that silence is mine. Not punishment. Not exile. Freedom. Because I finally understood. Presence only matters when it's met with respect. And generosity without acknowledgement becomes servitude. They didn't see the difference until I was gone. And by then, the silence was the only thing they had left of me. So now I ask you, whoever's still listening, was I wrong to walk away? Was I cruel to leave the house standing, but take the weight that held it together? Should I have stayed as a ghost in my own life for the sake of a family that never saw me? Or was this the only honest ending for a man who spent years giving everything to a silence that never once gave back? Tell me, what would you have done?